I want to welcome in our next panel and moderator. The next moderator is our chairman of our Public Policy Committee, Dennis Winkler. Now more than ever, we've got great things going on in Washington, D.C., and I think the conversation today will be brisk and very relevant to what's happening here in the Houston Port region. I see our panelists beginning to come over now. I do want to say this. We knew when we scheduled this panel, I see Dennis coming over. We knew when we scheduled this panel that our representatives would be in Washington, D.C. working with actual votes happening on the floor today. And so, Dennis, as I turn it over to you, I know that we may or may not get some of our panelists pulled away to actually do their job in D.C. So we'll be nimble on our feet and we'll move around and make things happen if we have to excuse our representatives to go do their good work there up on the Hill. So Dennis, I'll turn it over to you, and welcome all of our representatives. Good to see you.
Chad, thank you very much. It's absolutely an honor to moderate the Gulf Coast Industry Forum Congressional panel. I'm going to give brief introductions of our congressional members, but if you want to look at all the great detail of their accomplishments, we have that in the on the website for this event. And I'm going to do the introductions by seniority, and then we'll go to opening comments, then obviously we'll get to questions. So let me start off first by saying the Honorable Randy Weber has represented Texas's 14th Congressional District since 2013. He's running for his 4th term in Congress. Prior to going to Washington, Congressman Weber served 4 years in the Texas House. He built his successful air conditioning business from scratch in 1981. The Honorable Brian Babin has represented Texas's 36th Congressional District since January of 2015. He is running for his 3rd term. After dental school, Dr. Babin was commissioned as a captain in the U.S. Air Force. He and his wife have raised 5 children in Woodville and now enjoy 16 grandchildren. Getting my papers to turn here. Yeah, 16. It's amazing to me. Our next 2 congressional members are in their 1st terms and running to return to Washington, D.C. for 2nd terms. The Honorable Dan Crenshaw represents Texas's 2nd Congressional District. A newcomer to public office, Congressman Crenshaw certainly is not new to service. A U.S. Navy SEAL officer, he served 5 tours of duty, was awarded 2 Bronze Stars, a Purple Heart, and the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal with Value. The Honorable Sylvia Garcia represents Texas's 29th District. Prior to going to Washington, Congresswoman Garcia served as Texas State Senator, Harris County Commissioner for Precinct 2, and as Houston Controller and Presiding Judge for Houston's Municipal Courts. One of my neat facts about Congresswoman Garcia is she is the 8th of 10 children, which to me just amazes me growing up in a household like that. So, but anyway, I want to thank all of you for your service. Thanks for joining us. And what I'm going to do is give each of you a couple of minutes as opening comments. We'll go again in order with Congressman Weber, Congressman Babin, Congressman Crenshaw, and Congresswoman Garcia. So, Congressman Weber, you're up.
Well, thank you, Dennis. Pleasure to be here again with this group. So important to our Texas, our great state of Texas, our economy. Really, I'd say the country for that matter. Many of you know my Texas District 14 has 5 ports in it, more than any other member of Congress. The Port of Houston is not in that group. Of course, one of the largest in the world, but it's inextricably lined up with my district. As you know, the Houston Ship Channel comes up through Galveston Bay. And so we're still trying to figure out how we can get a toll booth out there where we can actually participate in some of that freight. But it's very proud to represent 14th District. I would be remiss if I didn't share with you exactly how large Texas is in the nation and the world, really. As many of you know, we would be, if we were a country, would be the 10th largest nation in the world. Texas leads the nation in exports, of which, by the way, 45% shipped to Canada and or Mexico. So, for us to get the new trade deal done behind NAFTA was extremely important. Trade with our neighbors to the north and south, believe it or not, supports more than 950,000 Texas jobs. I always like to say, Dennis, that what the things that make America great are the things that America makes. How do we do that? With a stable, affordable, reliable energy supply. Texas is the nation's leader in energy. We hope to continue to help America be the world's dominant energy independent country in the world. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Congressman. Congressman Babin?
Absolutely, Dennis. Thank you so much. First, let me say thank you to the Gulf Coast Industry Forum for having me here today. I'm sitting alongside three fine colleagues that I'm very, very proud and privileged to work with on issues facing Texas and the country as a whole. Getting the opportunity to discuss Southeast Texas and the Gulf Coast is one of the best parts of my job, and I'm thrilled to be doing that here today with you all. Southeast Texas plays a vital role in this country, and it's very, very important for several reasons. We are the stronghold for our national security. We're the epicenter of the world's energy sector, and we are the global leader in human space exploration, all right here in the greater Houston area. It is here in Texas that we hold the title of the #1 U.S. exporter, largest energy port, busiest military port, and the largest petrochemical manufacturing complex in the entire United States of America. This area has seen technological ingenuity that is shaping the future of our kids, providing state-of-the-art opportunities for our country's workforce, and paving the path forward for domestic manufacturing growth. The challenges over the last 6 months certainly have been unprecedented for our nation. Texans have proven once again that we are a resilient group of folks that will never be dismayed nor defeated, and we will stand up for what we believe in. We have faced great adversity amid even greater loss, but I have no doubt that we will emerge from this stronger than ever. We have gone rapidly from the best economy we've seen in 60 or 70 years because of the pandemic to having one of the worst recessions we've seen in a long time. And as we enter into the election season during this pandemic, we've got to stand together, united, not divided, and with respect for each other and respect for the law. And as to our first responders and to our healthcare workers and to our law enforcement who keep our community safe, I want to say a huge thank you. I'm blessed to be a Texan and proud to represent Texans in Congress. And so with that, I'll say thanks again for having me. I'm looking forward to today's discussion and the questions that will be forthcoming.
Thank you. Congressman Crenshaw?
Hi, great to be with you all and appreciate you having me here today. Dennis, thank you guys for the work y'all do to keep the Houston region prosperous and the enormous impact that you have on the rest of the U.S. as well. I think we all understand the importance of the work your industry does, why it's so important we ensure that we rebound in the aftermath of this pandemic. And I say that not just as a member from Houston, but also as an oil and gas kid growing up in Houston and following my dad's work all over the world and understanding what this industry does for the world, what it does for Texas, what it does for economic prosperity, lifting billions out of poverty. We all know how critical it is to protect American energy independence. It's critical to job growth, economic productivity, and environmental protection here in the United States, because American energy is the cleaner energy. In the face of COVID-19 and other geopolitical pressures, many industries in the Port of Houston have taken a real hit. The rest of the world relies on the products manufactured right here in Houston. We want to be a part of growing the energy dominance and trade that revolves around the Houston Ship Channel. I was really proud to see that the Houston Ship Channel expansion was included in WRDA, and I know my friends, colleagues here, Representatives Babin and Weber on T&I were really instrumental in getting that included in the final text of the bill. It was a full court press. I know we even had some prominent administration members down there to see the full breadth of the Houston Ship Channel recently. So it really is a gem of American innovation and economic prosperity, and we've got to protect it. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Congresswoman Garcia?
Well, first, Dennis, thank you so much for having me. I was thinking about the forum this morning as I was getting dressed, and I still remember when we all got together in my county commissioner's office to discuss SEED, and some people may never remember SEED, which was the prior name of the organization, and how we put together the Port Region Economic Alliance and all the work that we've done. And it's just so great that you all have kept it up and continued, because it's so important to brag to the whole world about the work that's being done in the Port region. I think sometimes we're a little overlooked, but I've always said that we're the heart of the economic engines in the Houston region, and in fact, the state. When you think of the Houston Ship Channel, its entirety, not just the Port of Houston, but the entire ship channel. You look at the petrochemical complex, and that's where things happen. That's what really turns our economy. And for me in my district, we've got the distinction of having the most construction jobs of any other district. So I provide the workers. So I tell people who sometimes question me as a Democrat as to why I'm in the energy caucus, for example. And I tell them, I said, well, because that's where the jobs are. That's what keeps my community going. That's what provides a pathway to the middle class for people in my community. And I think it's important to note too that this region is so large. And for me, it includes Houston, Jacinto City, Pasadena, Galena Park, and South Houston, all those communities in and around the ship channel. So I think it's important that we always focus not only on industry, but also the workers and all of the neighbors around the area. I know that Dennis will be talking about more. I know that Congressman Crenshaw mentioned the water resources bill and in the project to deepen and widen the port. I think that's a perfect example for us to demonstrate to all our friends that, we do work together. The media would portray us all as fighting every day between Democrats and Republicans, but think about it. We have two members that are on the TNI that are Republican, one, Lizzie Fletcher, who's a Democrat, and we all work together. It didn't matter whether it was in my district or whose district. It was about what was best for our region and the state. I think you find that kind of working together spirit when it comes to issues about NASA. It comes together in issues related to the maritime industry and helping San Jacinto College and Representative Babin and I will talk about that a little bit later on. So I think we need to start remembering that there's so much that brings us together, especially in fighting for our region and for this great state. So I look forward to our continued discussion so that we can really focus on some of these things and also be prepared to answer any questions. But for me, it's a delight to be here. I think I've been coming to these ever since we started them when I was county commissioner. And Dennis, you still do a great job moderating, and thank you for that.
Well, thank you. And again, I appreciate everybody's comments and really have nailed it. So the first question out of the box, we just had Rick Campos deliver the port address minutes ago. So let me start, Congressman Weber. You mentioned 5 seaports. How important is the Houston Ship Channel to get the funding for deepening and widening, and can we get it accomplished this year?
Wow. Well, 1 out of 2 of those questions is not bad. As I mentioned, the Houston Ship Channel comes right up through my district, and the deepening and widening of that ship channel, not just that one, but of course we're centering now on exactly where we're talking about Port Alliance region, is extremely important, Dennis. Sylvia Congresswoman Garcia kind of hit the nail on the head. A lot of construction jobs there. I think Brian Babin and I alluded to how much energy comes out of our districts. Houston Ship Channel, the Port of Houston, huge in that. We certainly need that. As I think Congressman Crenshaw alluded to, we're both on not only the TNI committee, but also the Water Resources Subcommittee Brian Babin and I serve on, which actually exercises jurisdiction over this type of funding. So we're hoping we get it done. As you're probably aware, we passed it unanimously in the House. We've made a lot of progress. The Senate is making progress, but hasn't passed their version yet. So we're optimistic that they'll get that done sometime, but your second question was a little tougher. You said this year. What was it? Yogi Berra said, I don't want to make a prediction. The problem with predicting is you're dealing with the future. and I would add the second part of that problem is you're dealing with the Senate. Did I say that out loud? So it's like you look at the calendar. There's not much time left. Of course, fiscal year ends September 30th. The relevant legislation, what we call Water Resources Development Act, technically it doesn't expire on September the 30th at the end of the current fiscal year, as you probably know. It's one of those bills that could be postponed to a lame duck session and probably will. That said, I'm confident that even if the Senate finishes its work on the bill in a timely manner, we'll get that to the president's desk by the end of the year. Now, will it be before November 3rd or after November 3rd? Your guess is as good as mine, but I'm optimistic we'll get there.
Good. Well, thank you. Congressman Babin, I think you have some perspective on that. I know you are full support for the bill, or I should say the bill for deepening and widening the port.
Yep.
Absolutely. I think every one of us on this panel today can agree that deepening, widening of the Houston Ship Channel is a critically important project, and not just for Texas, but for the economic health of our entire nation. The Port of Houston is a vital epicenter, that was already been said, of dynamic national and global growth. And for that very reason, I've led this effort in Congress and made it one of my priorities to get accomplished while in Congress. And I'm very proud to be one of the representatives of the Houston Ship Channel and the Port of Houston. There are several moving pieces right now, Dennis, for this project, but at this moment, the contributed funds agreement is the very top priority. This agreement would allow the Port of Houston to contribute funds to the Army Corps to review the design work that the port is currently doing. This agreement has to be approved, however, by the Office of Management and Budget, or OMB, and sent to the committees on appropriations in both chambers for final approval. It includes the Senate. When I say both chambers, it's Randy had mentioned just a second ago. Additionally, OMB should provide a letter of concurrence, which is basically a letter stating that the project adheres to administration policy, and this will be for the chief's report. And while this is not needed for authorization, it's likely to contain very specific language regarding what we call the assumption of maintenance request made by the Port of Houston, and which is so vitally important for our channel and the port. This was the request made by the Port of Houston and included by us in the recently passed WRDA Act in the House of Representatives. My office has been in touch this very week with OMB and with appropriators to make sure that we get final approval and we can continue to move forward on that.
Great. Congresswoman, I'm going to go to you next on this because I know you convened a group of stakeholders, had the House Speaker come down and made some commitments at that time that we would get a bill passed. So are you as optimistic or more optimistic than the other two congressmen that we'll get this done?
Well, I think for me, when the speaker calls and lets you know that she's coming to town and she will do an event with me, you sit back and try to decide whether you're going to do a policy event, a political fundraiser, or just a get together. And to me, there's no higher priority for the growth of our region, deepening and widening of the port. So I asked her to come down, and I had not realized, Dennis, that she hadn't been down, I think, for like 20 years or 15 years. I forget what the number was. So she was absolutely excited. So we had a very good visit. A lot of the stakeholders there, everyone from the ILA to the chair of the board to some of the folks that are concerned about some of the environmental justice issues, broad range of folks. And she committed then to make sure that a bill did get passed and that we would work on it. And of course, as has already been said, we're working against the clock because we've done our part, and now it's up to the Senate. But I think what matters here more is that we put really good, close eye attention on it. And if we don't get it done, we certainly have a good springboard to go for next time. But I know that we'll all continue to work together to do everything it takes to make sure that this gets done, because it's what's needed in the region. And I will certainly continue to take the lead of Congressman Babin and Congressman Weber, because they serve on that subcommittee, they serve on that T&I, and I think that's what's critical. But in the end, we'll work to make sure it gets done.
Thank you. Congressman Crenshaw, I know you see the importance of deepening and widening, but you had mentioned something earlier about national security. Do you want to reflect on how important the ship channel is to the U.S. national security?
Sure. I don't want to repeat what my colleagues have already stated about the Houston Ship Channel and the particulars of the legislation. So maybe we talk about the broader importance of it. You know, what is the point of widening and deepening it? Well, of course, we need additional capacity. I mean, that's the point. Additional capacity for what? Well, it's not just goods and trade. It's our energy industry. And our energy industry, why is it important that we become energy independent? I mean, that term gets thrown around a lot. I don't know that we always explain exactly why it's important, both for our economy and for the world and for the environment. And it is no secret that there's a large-scale attack on the American energy industry, large scale. Whether it's building of pipelines, whether it's proposals coming from a potential Biden administration that says no new permitting for fracking. They're not saying they're banning fracking, but there were no new permitting for it. The weaponization of our court system against the energy industry, against new pipelines, which would export clean natural gas to export terminals and export it around the world. I cannot think of a better thing for reducing carbon emissions than exporting our natural gas around the world. If you want to single-handedly meet the proposed criteria of something like the Paris Climate Accords, then exporting natural gas to places like China and India that are primarily burning dirty coal would be the first thing on our list to do. We can't do that if we don't want to use the clean natural gas they already have in Texas, an abundance of it. We can't do that if we're always attacking the pipeline building in Texas and throughout the country. People in the Northeast, for some reason, would rather import Russian natural gas from across the ocean instead of simply allowing pipelines to be built so that they can heat their homes. Californians would for some reason prefer rolling blackouts and an unsustainable solar and wind Green New Deal type energy plan as opposed to cleaner nuclear and cleaner natural gas. We've got to do what makes sense here. I think Texans have long understood what makes sense. This is the broader conversation about the Houston Ship Channel. As far as security goes, notice that it's not very widely reported on, but peace in the Middle East has been, this long time goal of peace between Sunni Arabs and Israelis has been accomplished all of a sudden. It's not really reported on, but part of that is leverage. Part of that is our ability to say, you know what, we don't need your oil and gas industries in the Middle East. We don't necessarily need you anymore. We have our own. All right, we don't need to rely on Russia. We can go to our European partners and say, hey, we want you to use American natural gas. You don't have to rely on Russian gas. We want you to use this from a friendly nation. This is true power, and it's a power for good. And we have to talk about it that way. We can't be afraid to shy away from talking about the international, the national benefits, security benefits of energy independence.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm going to go back to Congressman Weber again and just ask, I want to get into the topic of a coastal barrier. Obviously, we had a near miss, if you will, with Hurricane Laura. How important, what's going on with the coastal barrier? Will we be able to get that done and expedited?
Well, very important. And actually, Dennis, I've grown up on the Gulf Coast of Texas, probably the one that's been here the longest. I know Dr. Babin's a little older than I am, but he actually left and served our country, and for that we're very grateful. But I've been in a 20-mile radius for 67 years. My first hurricane was Hurricane Carla in 1961. Not 1861 is my kids' thing. And anyway, it's so important. The Netherlands hold back the sea. And yes, we dodged a bullet in Hurricane Laura, but don't forget Ike, Harvey. We've got things that bring in a rush of water that we need to be able to hold that sea tide back, if you will, that surge. And had Ike gone up the Houston Ship Channel, what a disaster that would have been. To my colleague Dan Crenshaw's comments about, you look at the peace between Israel and the Arabs, for example, if we destroy our energy sector, which there are a lot of people who don't like fossil fuel, no big surprise. They say they believe in all of the above, energy policy, but it's all of the above ground. They don't want nothing out of the ground. For us, it's extremely important. The fact that Brian and I are on the T&I committee, along with Lizzie Fletcher, are on the T&I committee, and we're able to interact with the Corps of Engineers very frequently, is a great thing. We've got a new colonel you're probably aware of, Colonel Tim Bell. He's doing a great job. We're very, very confident, very, very excited about the possibilities. In this year's WRDA, at least the House-passed version, we were successful in getting the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund, HMTF, more fully utilized. And we've been fighting that battle. I've been here almost 8 years, Dennis. We've been fighting that battle for a long, long time. And who knew that the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund was actually supposed to be utilized for, harbor maintenance? What a wild concept. But we're fighting that battle. I'm confident that we're going to make some progress there. We need our energy sector in Texas. You're aware of the study, the Sabines, the Galfrey. Actually, there's a longer study than just what we would call the coastal spine that's been going on for it to protect our vital interests. Echoing again what Dan Crenshaw said, national security, even world security, because now that we have we're energy dominant, energy independent, we can say to those Saudis, those other countries, we don't need you. And more importantly, we can say to our allies that we can help you. We will not use this as a lever. We will not use this as a weapon against you, but a good economic tool, a good partnership tool, and we can have peace and prosperity. So it's extremely important to us. Call it what you want, Ike, coastal barrier protection, whatever you want to call it, coastal spine, extremely important. We're pushing for grants, U.S. DOT grants. There are such as the BUILD grants, which is better utilizing investments to leverage development. They were formerly known as, I'm sure a lot of our friends participating as the Tiger grants. We're pushing for those. Bottom line is we're leaving no unturned stone, no stone unturned in this effort to get this done. And I'm confident that it looks like we're making progress, and I'll yield back.
Thank you, Congressman. Let me go to Congressman Babin. I mentioned we had a near miss. Obviously, that's the Ship Channel region. Your district did not, Congressman. So first off, how are your constituents doing? And tell us a little bit about why we need a coastal area.
Well, we definitely need a coastal barrier, and the 9 counties that I represent, basically from Louisiana line over to Houston, 3 of my counties got hit pretty hard, Jasper, Orange, and Newton counties. And then my colleague across the Sabine River, Clay Higgins, in southwest Louisiana, really got hit. So it seems like we get more than our share of these hurricanes, and having seen Hurricane Ike and having seen a 20-foot storm surge, had it been 20 miles farther to the west, I can't remember, one of my colleagues mentioned it, and had it come straight up the Houston Ship Channel, it would have been an absolute disaster. And so that's what, for that reason, I think that having the Ike Dike and the storm surge protection that you're asking about is absolutely a great necessity. I was on a call this very morning with the International Maritime Advisory Committee, Texas A&M University in Galveston, a number of engineers and a number of folks from BAHEP, the Economic BAHEP Economic Development Group, and we talked about the Ike Dike, and we talked about the studies. We've got a design study going on right now over on the east side of my district. We've been dealing with Orange County. As I said, it did get hit reasonably, in fact, fairly hard by Hurricane Laura. But I also like to say just what my colleague Dan Crenshaw said. We've got a grave threat, to the fossil fuel industry that Texas has been built on, and that our Houston area is absolutely the epicenter of this. Not only the production, the pipelines, but the refining and the chemical industry. If we get an administration that seems to be hell bent to deny permits for fracking, which has created this enormous production of natural gas and oil that we haven't seen in decades and decades, and put us on the path to independence, and now that we can export this energy, it's even more crucial that we protect the area that I call the epicenter of the oil and gas industry. So we absolutely have got to do that. And I was pleased to have, as I said earlier, to help pass the WRDA Act in the House this summer, which included a provision that authorized much needed mitigation infrastructure, and that's exactly what the Ike Dike is. And the Corps has identified tentatively selected plans. We're working with the public in coordination process with NEPA, with National Environmental Policy Act, and working on a preliminary technical design. And I've spoken numerous times with Secretary R.D. James of the Army Corps, as well as on the project for the Ike Dike and the storm surge mitigation, I'm trying to say it, if I can spit it out, as well as the Port of Houston widening and deepening that we've already talked about. And I'm very pleased to say that R.D. James has expressed a very, very much critical support for what we're trying to do. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work with him. We do know that the Corps, one of their biggest problems is giving us permits to do these types of things. And we're trying to shorten that permitting time. I do know that the president said, even when he was a candidate, that we needed to shorten those permitting times. He said, he even told a story about how the Empire State Building was built back in the 30s in 9 months. He said it would take 10 years to get a permit to build it today. And so I'm real pleased to say I'm proud of the way the president is operating and trying to shorten up these wait times that are just incredibly burdensome on our industries, on job creation. And Lord help us if someone starts denying us permits to do fracking, drilling, and I think Texas is going to absolutely probably suffer as much, if not more, than any other state in this country if we don't have an administration that is friendly to oil and gas and the refining, and in fact, upstream, midstream, and downstream of the entire industry. So I'll yield back to that, Dennis. Thank you.
Okay, let me transition just ever so slightly to Congressman Crenshaw. We've talked storm surge. We all know flooding in Houston is not just storm surge, as your district well knows. So can you give us a little talk about that? And it sounds to me like they have also teed you up for a little discussion around regulation as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, in my district, the issue is not exactly storm surge, but simply rainfall. My district was, one of the worst hit by Harvey. My district has Addicks Reservoir in it. We have Lake Houston, Cypress Creek overflow there. And it's just a combination of things. And I have been happy with the direction that we've been seeing. It does seem like local, state, and federal authorities have been woken up by Hurricane Harvey. And should have happened decades before that, but it didn't. And there's a variety of things that have to be done. Unfortunately, one of those things is long-term studies. And nobody likes to hear studies because they last for 3 to 5 years. But they are necessary because we are looking to spend tens of billions of dollars on proper mitigation infrastructure that would be able to deal with heavy rainfall. What it looks like that'll end up being, and some of it's already been started and funded, say the new gates in the southern part of the Lake Houston Dam, simply desilting and getting rid of built up sediment in the San Jacinto, clearing out bayous and updating the reservoirs, and then looking more strategically at where you can purchase land. So Harris County Flood Control District is in charge of that. Purchase land, create reservoirs, create detention, and basically do two things: detain the water and make sure that water flows correctly. That's the name of the game when it comes to flood response. And then getting the city to make sure that it updates its standards, which it has, and update drainages too. Sometimes you see drainage, again, which is a city responsibility, that simply isn't wide enough. So there's just a whole variety of things that are being looked at. But I always want people to know that I have a lot of confidence in Harris County Flood Control District. I love working with them. They know what they're doing, and they're very open and accessible to the public. We've been laser focused on this for the last couple of years. Oh, and on NEPA, yeah, I don't have a lot to add to what Congressman Babin said about NEPA, but I've been really impressed by. So I don't know if you guys subscribe to my podcast, but one of the guests I had on was Alex Hergot, who leads the permitting council that President Trump set up. It was authorized by Congress, but never set up by President Obama back in 2015. But President Trump went forward with it. Obviously, he has a background in permitting, what it takes to build things. And what we noticed was, as Western countries go, we take longer to build the simplest of things, up to 7 years as the average, to get all these agencies to cut through the red tape and simply give somebody an answer. Yes or no. This isn't even about protecting the environment. This is just, hey, what do our own regulations say, and are we enforcing them correctly, right? And so getting that down to less than 2 years has been a main goal of that council, and I think it's incredibly necessary. We cannot put legislation on the floor, spending trillions on infrastructure, but then make it harder to build the infrastructure by making more red tape, putting more red tape around this permitting process. That's crazy. Allowing ourselves to build what we need to build would be a pretty good first step for an infrastructure plan, and I think that's the track we're on. It could always be better, but that's the track we're on.
Congresswoman, I want to give you a chance to respond to some of this if you want, but I first want to say to you personally, thank you for your efforts in supporting the Fort Hood soldier, Vanessa Guillen, and some of that legislation. I know that veteran issues are important to you, and you've had some town halls, I believe, really looking at how you help some of our veterans be gainfully employed. So if you want to go down that workforce path, or if you want to respond to some of the infrastructure issues, your call. You'll unmute, please.
I forgot it. I was unmuted. But first, thank you so much for remembering Vanessa Guillen. And as you know, yesterday we filed a bill, the I'm Vanessa Guillen Act, that will do one really big change. But I think it's an important change, which is to get all the complaints of sexual discrimination, sexual harassment outside of the chain of command, and it authorizes the creation of a chief prosecutor to handle those claims. For what reason? So that people will feel comfortable in filing and not have any fear of retribution or any kind of change in position or anything, retribution of any sort for filing the complaint. And yes, veterans is one of those other issues, Dennis, that gets broad-based bipartisan support. So far, we have filed 58 bills in Congress that impact veterans, and 17 of them have already passed and are already become law. And they range from more opportunities in education and careers in the STEM fields, and helping make more mortgage more affordable for veterans, and a lot of the things that we know that veterans need to be able to get good jobs. You know, I'm reminded of the event that we did with the port some years ago that was called from hard hat to helmet to hard hat. Remember that one? You know,
Yes.
taking our veterans the helmet, into hard hats and getting them those skills in and around the port and trade. And I think those are important. But Dennis, I know your events are always nonpartisan, but I cannot help but try to correct the record here. I sat on the Democratic Platform Drafting Committee, and one of the first things I did was look at the energy section. I looked at the section on NASA. I looked at the energy, the section on immigration. I looked at the things that matter to Texas. And I can assure you that there is not one word that says anything about a fracking ban. And there's not one word that says anything about permits. As you know, the only permit area that the federal government can get involved in is the permits on our own federal lands. Because permits are done through TCEQ, they're done through the states. So this whole notion that Biden is going to go in there and stop all permits is simply not true. Again, I don't want to make this into a political discussion, but it's been raised by two of my colleagues, and I just want to correct the record. And similarly, I think it's important to note that Obama did set up the group that Crenshaw was talking about. But it took Trump 18 months to appoint a director to head that up. So I think before we start transitioning this discussion about policy issues that are important to our region, working together, we should stay on track of doing that, because I think it's important that we work on things that we can agree on. And let's save the politics when we get back home on the weekend and do the campaigning that we've got to do for November. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Ed, thank you for keeping it somewhat on point there. I appreciate correcting the record. We have about maybe 8 more minutes left. I want to save some time to have everybody get a chance to come back with final comments. But I would like to continue down that workforce angle a little bit and just kind of ask, and again, maybe this is a little bit off topic because education's not necessarily a national issue, it's local, but I do know that our congressional delegation has helped us a lot with workforce training, etc. What can be done as we continue to grow the petrochemical industry, grow the maritime industry? What can be done to be sure we have people trained and ready to do those jobs? So I'll go back to Congressman Weber to ask and just kind of go around the horn again.
Well, thank you, Dennis. That's pretty easy. What can be done is young people can be trained about how we are able to make energy cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. We do care about the environment. And while I agree with Congresswoman Garcia that we don't want to talk about necessarily what a presidential candidate going forward might do about banning something, I will say we ought to educate our young kids that Texas has become so great because of the energy, because of the workforce. And in our district, the Keystone Pipeline was coming into our district. The previous administration did not get it permitted. President Trump got in there and got it permitted. So energy is important, building is important, construction is important, pipelines are important, and the fact that we are a big energy producing state, we can do it cleanly, we can respect the environment, we can respect each other. I think we need to educate our kids to that, and that's one of the things that'll help our area. I'll yield back.
Congressman Babin?
Absolutely. I'm going to say just a couple of things, and I've got probably at least a 5-minute drive to get back over there, Dennis, and then so I'm going to yield back after I get through saying maybe a minute here. But the first thing I think we need to do as far as our workforce, we've got to get away from the bachelor's degree or bust mentality that so many people seem to have in this country, which portrays that a 4-year degree is the only path to success. Because in my district, and every one of us on this call today know especially that in this area of of Texas that we represent, that apprenticeships short-term certification programs, technical education can often prepare people for industry employment far more effectively than a four-year degree in a traditional college. From the moment that students begin high school, they must have meaningful exposure to education paths that lead them to quality, high-paying jobs without incurring massive student debt, which is what we've been seeing. The average salary at the plants that I represent down in the Deer Park, LaPorte, stretching all the way in Baytown, all the way to Orange, is $100,000, a six-figure salary. And I also serve on the House American Workers Task Force, which is a group of lawmakers working hard to reorient American education to fit this very mold. We've recommended that Congress pass legislation to encourage industry leaders and business representatives to be included on every educational accreditation board and to expand students' abilities to stack credentials from different programs, certificates, apprenticeships, and more, so we can incentivize industry employers to train these employees by sharing the costs of the education. And these industries and these businesses are more than happy to do so. In fact, they're asking to do so. But the most significant goal that I think we ought to be working towards in the job creation is equalizing funding between colleges and these CTE programs. And let me just say this, because Sylvia and I are good friends. I work with her and have worked with her on numbers of occasions. I don't mean to be getting partisan, but I've heard what Mr. Biden has said, and I hope that you're right, and I'm trusting that you are right, that our oil and gas industry will be safe, and that we will continue to prosper down here in the heart of oil and gas in the great state of Texas. So with that, I'll yield back, and I'm going to have to leave, Dennis.
Thank you, Dr. Babin. Appreciate that. So let me go now to Congressman Crenshaw. Anything to add on the workforce issue?
We are all running to votes right now. Workforce training is extremely important. This is one of the most popular things you can talk about with people in Houston. They want jobs that actually pay well. And again, a lot of these industries that are propped up by the Houston Ship Channel, by the oil and gas industry, are at the front lines of taking in anybody and everybody. One of my, I've seen some really amazing programs, and that putting them through workforce training, getting close to six-figure jobs at the end of it. We're talking it's like $75K a year right off the bat, without a bunch of debt, without a bunch of a long commitment to a four-year degree. It really is the future. Getting high schools involved in that at an earlier stage, I think, is really the right way to do it. And I'll go back onto this. Protecting the oil and gas industry is vital. Okay. And I'm not going to quibble. It's not split hairs here. What I said was that Joe Biden rolled back his earlier comments about banning fracking, which he did say, and Harris has said as well. They rolled those back and said no more federal permits. Okay. Which is what we agree on, apparently. But that's a big deal. And let's not forget the Democrats have long been opposed to what they call the Halliburton loophole, which allowed states to regulate it in the first place. Okay. To say that there's not open hostility to this industry is to whistle past the graveyard. It is simply not true. All right. And I hope that as a Houston delegation, we simply stand up to it. That should be our priority, because it does support. We know it's better for the environment, for the global environment. We know that it's better for Houston. We know that it's better for the economy. We know that it's better for these kind of jobs that we're talking about in the workforce training programs that they support. So I think we can all agree on that. We do unfortunately have to go vote.
Congressman, thank you. Congresswoman, I am going to leave it to you to wrap us up. And first, I will say thank you for your support to the Houston delegation and your support to this industry.
Well, absolutely, Dennis. And I just wanted to mention that Congressman Babin and I have filed HR 7456, which is a bill that we introduced that would allow a competitive grant program for community and technical colleges offering training programs for maritime industry professions. So this is key for making sure that we keep those jobs and those skill sets ready for the maritime industry. I've been working very closely with San Jacinto College on this bill. And again, it's another example of us working together. Congressman Babin and I have been doing this and working on it and working on making sure that if it passes, that we get the dollars for it. And it would be $200 million nationwide. So we do have support from members from a couple of other states. So we're real hopeful that we can get this done. And as I said, I don't want to get into the politics. I'll wait till the weekend when I get home. But rest assured that I went through that platform very carefully to make sure that Texas interests were protected. But it won't end there. My voice in the Energy Caucus, my voice in our own conference caucus will always be there to make sure that our industry, our region, has the economic vitality it needs to make sure that it thrives, not just today, but in the future. So thank you so much. And now I got to run over there and vote before they close votes.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Appreciate it. Chad, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you. I think we got into a robust discussion. I think the most important message I got out of that is we have a delegation that is squarely behind this region and the jobs in this region. So thank you, sir.
No, outstanding. Great job as usual, Dennis. I don't think anybody in our entire organization envies the job that you've got when you get to moderate congressional panel. So great job. We appreciate it. We know that they're all working hard for this region. So it's evident, and we're lucky to have people that are that passionate about really doing their job there for what's happening back here. And you can hear that in all of their voices and comments. So we appreciate your work on our policy committee, the leadership there. We appreciate the work you do at the DC and at the state level. So thank you so much, Dennis.